Welcome to the Separation Anxiety in Dogs Decoded podcast. I am your host, Ness Jones, and we'll be deep diving into all things separation anxiety. But before we get started, please make sure you like this episode, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications so you never miss another one. And don't forget, if you are interested in joining my easy step-by-step training program to resolve separation anxiety in your dog, you'll find the link in the show notes. Now let's get started. Welcome back. Today I am going to be talking about something that kind of upsets me a little bit. It's about people thinking that their dogs are getting back at them or taking revenge on them because they've been left alone. So as we know, dogs do many different things if they're distressed when we walk out the door. So often one of the most common ones is barking, howling, crying, etc. So vocalization when we leave. And while that's not really going to impact you per se, except that your dog is distressed and you probably feel anxious and guilty yourself for leaving them, but it certainly will impact your neighbors if they can hear it. But what about the dogs that destroy your belongings, or the ones that pee and poo in the home because they're that distressed when you walk out the door? Now, unfortunately, I have had people say to me in the past that their dog is getting back at them, is taking revenge because you left, or because they left them alone by themselves. And I really think it's important to tackle this because that's not the case. And I mean, yes, if you come back and your belongings have been decimated, if your couch looks like it's exploded, if there's damage around the entrance points, damage around the door frames or the window frames, it's easy to jump to that conclusion, but we mustn't. The dog isn't doing it to get back at you. The dog is doing it because they're that panicked. I especially think a dog that soils in the home, that dog is in a lot of distress. Dogs don't do that. If they're house trained and they're quite happy to, use the backyard, you're at home, and the only time that they soil is when they're left by themselves. They're not doing it to exact revenge and how dare you leave me alone, I'll show you. They don't think like that. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that. Dogs do have emotions, and they're very similar to us. They feel joy, they feel sadness, they have a whole gamut of emotions. And if you pay attention, you can see that. But one thing they don't have is the capacity to take revenge or even to take responsibility for their actions. So when you walk out the door and your dog does something destructive, whatever that may be for your dog, because they do different things, it's not that they're trying to get back at you, and they're simply reacting to a situation in the only way they know how. Or it could be that they're so panicked that their little brains, they actually stop thinking. A dog that's in fear, like if the separation anxiety is so severe that they are having a complete and utter meltdown and they're very, very fearful, they're in distress. And we see with a lot of dogs, when they get to that point, there's no one home, they're not thinking anymore. And that's why I think we hear about dogs jumping out of 2-story windows, because they're not thinking about their safety, they're just panicked and they just want to flee. I know myself with my own boy, if he's very noise reactive, he's not, I should rephrase that. He's not very noise reactive. He's pretty good, but some things do scare him. Thunder, for example. So I know when he hears a big scary noise that is frightening to him, he's not home anymore. There's nobody in there. He's not thinking. He's not capable of thinking rationally. And I think we have to be really, really conscious of that with dogs. And the worst thing we can do if we do come home and the couch is exploded is to punish them for it, because there will be a reason. And even if it's not separation related, if it's not separation anxiety, maybe the couch was torn apart because the dog is frustrated, maybe it's not getting its needs met, maybe it's bored and it's needs something to do with its time. That's not the dog's fault either. That's our fault for not providing them with the outlets that they need so that they can settle when we walk out the door. So we do, we need to know, why is the dog doing it? Is it based in anxiety? Is it based in frustration? And then we need to say, it's still not the dog's fault, whichever way it is, whichever one of those two things it is. And we can't blame them, and we can't assign human behaviors to them when the situation is more about their anxiety and distress than it is about your expensive Italian leather boots or your couch or your door frame. So the best solution, if you come home and something awful has happened in your home while you've been gone, don't blame your dog. Don't shame them either, because they know that you're telling them off. It's really upsetting for them. The videos where you see a dog sitting in the corner huddled with big wide eyes and being told off because they did something, because they did a piddle on the floor when they couldn't help it and they were in distress. It can be quite upsetting. So the best solution, rather than do any of that, is to do some training and do some gradual exposure therapy and desensitization to those, because we want the dog to feel safe and we want the dog to feel confident when you leave them. So if you do the training, if you put the work in, will stop those unwanted behaviors, and your dog won't feel distress when you walk out the door, and you won't get those behaviors that you don't want. So there's no reason to blame the dog. They're not taking revenge. Dogs don't think like that. So keep that in mind. If you do go out and leave your dog and something bad happens when when you've been out and you come home and you find it, please don't blame your dog. Don't take it out on them. Don't jump to the conclusion that they're getting back at you. Just do something about it. Do some training, figure out why it's happening, and then do some training around that. Now, if you have a question that you would like answered on this podcast, I am more than happy to do so. Just shoot me an email at hello@nessjones.com. That's hello@nessjones.com, and just put podcast question in the subject area. You have been listening to Ness Jones on the Separation Anxiety in Dogs Decoded podcast. Don't forget to check out the show notes to learn more about my programs and how I can help you with tailored training. Until next time.